What up, Fantasy Football Hustler back at ya. Are you guys ready to figure out how to break down your rosters for your new league? If it's your first time here, make sure you subscribe. Check me out everywhere on all social media, fantasyfootballhustler.com. Go follow me everywhere, guys. Appreciate it. Let's get into this. There's no such thing as standard rosters, okay? I will be the first to say it. Just because Yahoo, Sleeper, ESPN, just because they have foundations set for you, it doesn't mean it's the end all be all. The normal foundation that you're going to see is one quarterback, two running backs, two wide receivers, one tight end, one flex where you can play a wide receiver, a running back, or a tight end, one kicker, and then one defense and special teams unit. Usually see like 4 to 6 bench spots. Most platforms have an injury reserve. Definitely got to have some of those. Just remember, these are all the foundations. If you don't want to play with a kicker, you don't have to. If you don't want to play with the team defense because you think it's lame and you would rather play with IDP, you could do that. If you want to add in more spots, you could do that. So these are just the foundations that the platform gives you. A good commissioner is always going to go above and beyond the foundations. Let's get into some options on what you can do to customize your league a little bit more. Extra positions. You gotta add them. I said it before. The defaults are just the foundations. That is it. Any position can be added or removed. Suggestion: if you play in 10-team leagues or smaller, you definitely must add extra positions. I mean, you should have probably add an extra QB position, add in an extra wide receiver spot, add in a couple extra flex spots. Make it interesting. If you are in a smaller league, adding extra spots, it just gives an extra layer of strategy. That is really the main thing. I mean, the cream is really going to rise to the top. It makes it harder for one player on the opposing team to entirely dominate, the week against you. That's one of the things I like about adding extra spots. Everybody knows, like last year, if you went against Kamara in the championship week, you play in a league where you just use, the default foundations, you went against Kamara, you more than likely lost. It's just the way it works when you play with a smaller amount of positions. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. You got to add individual defensive players. You must try it. It is so much fun. You don't have to have an entire defense. You could literally have a couple flex spots. We're going to talk about that a little bit later, but it's way more fun than team defense, way more fun, and it's super easy to track. It is not hard. It's easy to pick up waiver wire ads. It's easy to see who's scoring what in comparison to what offensive players. Super, super easy. You must try. Let's talk about those flex positions, because there's a lot of different ways that you can go with that. If you're listening to this in podcast form, make sure you hop over to YouTube, because I do have the graphics and everything up on the screen, kind of breaking it down a little bit more. And before we get in to the flex position, let me remind everybody, if you want to join the dopest fantasy football community on the internet, you got to go get signed up at patreon.com/ffhustler420. I'm starting a bunch of leagues, giving direct access to me as far as like questions for your draft. We're also doing a signed Ricky Williams jersey right now for anyone who subscribes on YouTube. And when you join on Patreon, you get bonus entries into the giveaway. So you want to go do that. Go get signed up right now. Patreon.com/ffhustler420. Let's get back into these flex positions. Most common flex position that you will see is going to be the wide receiver, running back, and tight end. If you're using just the default foundation rosters, every league is going to have at least one of those in there. Now, the one that is becoming the second most common flex spot is the super flex. This is where you can play a quarterback, a wide receiver, a running back, or a tight end. Literally any position could go into this spot. If you're playing on ESPN, they label it the offensive player utility spot, or OP. Even if you play in a 12-team league, 2 quarterbacks start on every team. That's 24 quarterbacks. Yes, I know that there's 32, and I know that some quarterbacks are kind of garbage, but guess what? That's where the strategy comes in. Just like running backs, we play with 2 running backs. Sometimes we play with 3. It doesn't matter. all the quarterbacks in the NFL are decent. There's only a couple that are really, really, really bad. It just adds in an extra layer of strategy when you add in that super flex. I would really recommend trying one out. It is super fun. Now, how about we want to go into some alternative flex spots, ones that don't really get used that much. You have the wide receiver, running back, so just the two positions. I've also seen the wide receiver and tight end options also. Just got a few different ways that you can do it. If you're playing in like a deep league, 14 team league, 16 team league, something like that, maybe you add a couple flex positions like this just to make it a little bit more interesting than adding, specific running back, wide receiver, tight end spots. So it's fun just adding in other layers. That's what it's all about. Add more layers to that onion. Now, when we talk about rosters, we got to talk about defense and special teams versus IDP, a debate that has been going on since the dawn of time. There's nothing wrong with it, but I like cheering for the individual defensive players myself. Now, let's talk about just some of the differences. So with defense and special teams, you choose an entire team versus a single player. So you don't get any individual player recognition. You're only going after, the entire team. So you get points for good stuff, but you also get points taken away for bad stuff. You get positive points for things like sacks, interceptions, things like that. But you also get negative points for the amount of points that your team gives up. So a little bit of a different dynamic. If your team only gives up, 10 points or less, you get points. But the more points that your defense gives up, and in the NFL, all teams are scoring like 20 plus these days. I believe once you get over like 28 points, that's when you start going negative in the points usually. And most teams are scoring over 28 points. So that's why I kind of really just don't like team defense. And usually the team defense makes a super, super small difference in the outcome of your fantasy game. So what I would say is if you're going to play with team defense, adjust the scoring a little bit, make the position actually make a difference, not just something that people literally draft as their very last position. You can get creative with it. You can change the scoring around, make it a little bit better. The foundations are just the foundations. Now, IDP. You get to choose the individual defensive stars to cheer for them versus the entire squad. So, cheering for a guy like Devin White, a guy like Darius Leonard, some of the biggest stars in the NFL on either side of the ball, that's who we're getting to cheer for. And it is so fun. Trust me. You get points for all plays, even like tackles, just like running backs, how they get a point for running 10 yards. Linebackers, they get points when they tackle that running back. So just imagine if you had the running back and you had the linebacker on the same fantasy team, running back runs for 10 yards, linebacker tackles them, boom, you just double dipped on your points. Like that's how fun it is. Every time you watch an offensive play, you watch a defensive play at the exact same time. Why not track some of those guys? It's all easy when you get used to it really fast. Trust me, you never get negative points for individual defensive players. Unless they get like an interception and they fumble, or something like that. But even then, it's still positive because they had to create that turnover to be able to get that ball. So either way, it doesn't really end up being a negative points. Stats are easily trackable on any of these platforms that you play on. It is super easy to see why someone scored the way that they did and see every single stat, that they racked up to get those points. Super, super easy. And it is very easy to figure out what free agents you want to pick up. So if you think that it's hard to work the free agent waiver wire on offense, then it might be hard for you to work it on defense. But if you're the type of person who how to work the offensive waiver wire, the defensive waiver wire is literally the exact same thing. You're tracking everything based off of points. Same thing. Don't even worry about it. Try IDP. You will love it. Everybody who I've gotten into a league with me said that they love it and would not go back. So obviously you do need to be a dope commissioner to be able to bring people to the IDP sector and have them enjoy it. But if you roll with me, you're going to be a dope commissioner. Getting into those IDP roster options for beginner leagues, I would say 2 to 4 IDP flex spots. Now you can literally put any position in those flex spots. Think of them as a super flex for defense. So you can play defensive linemen there, linebackers, defensive back, any and all of that in those IDP flex spots. 2 to 4 in your beginner leagues and just where you want to, help people dip their toe into the water. Everybody will have a stacked roster. I don't care how many teams you have. It'll be so easy to fill anywhere from 2 to 4 roster spots. Trust me. Your intermediate leagues. With these ones, I would say anywhere from 1 to 3 defensive linemen. So that means you can play D end or D tackle in that spot. 1 to 3 linebackers. 1 to 3 defensive backs. And for the defensive backs, that could be safety or corners. And I would still have 1 to 3 IDP flex spots in there. So no, I wouldn't have 3 of each position. In the Hustler leagues, I have 2 D linemen, 2 linebackers, 2 defensive backs, and 3 IDP flex spots. It does end up being 9 spots total. It still doesn't end up being that hard. Like all the new people who tried it, they love it. Super easy. We do mock drafts and stuff to get ready. Super easy. You want to get into an advanced league. Here's where the cream's really going to rise to the top. This is where you would throw in 1 to 2 defensive linemen, 1 to 2 defensive tackles, 2 to 4 linebackers, 1 to 2 cornerbacks, 1 to 2 safeties, and 1 to 2 IDP flex spots. It really just depends on how advanced you want to make it. Either way, it could be fun. You can build these rosters however you like, whether you want to do it beginner status, intermediate status, advanced status. It doesn't matter. It's all going to be fun for you. However you do it, convert some of those leagues that you have from team defense to a beginner IDP league. Put in 2 to 4 IDP flex spots. You will love it. Trust me. My final thoughts. Do not be one of those commissioners that literally just goes off of the foundations for any of these platforms. Anybody can click a button and start a league, okay? It takes a real G to be a dope commissioner and create a dope experience for all of your friends. Don't be one of those clowns that just goes off of the foundations, who doesn't try to customize things. Make your league an experience of its own. People will want to stay in your leagues forever and ever if you add a little bit of a wrinkle and you make it different from all the generic ones that are on the internet. I cannot stress that enough. You know why people like playing in the Hustler leagues? Because they all have a little bit of a twist to them. I make them my own experience. I make them fun all around. And if you just do things like everybody else, trust me, the fun is only going to last so long. Your league mates are going to love you because you created a different style of league. There may be a little bit of pushback in the beginning when you try to move people to IDP. It's not going to last long. If you explain it to them the way I'm explaining it to you, trust me, everybody will have a stacked roster because we are choosing the cream of the crop defenders that everybody knows. And it's easy to track inside of whatever platform you're using. It's very easy to track, very easy to see who you should be drafting. Let's do it, guys. Let's convert some of those leagues to IDP. Let's be dope-ass commissioners. If you don't like kickers, let's get them out of fantasy football. If you don't like team defense and you want to play offense only, you don't want to do IDP, that's up to you too. You know, just play offense only. Do it how you want, but make it a unique experience. Alrighty, guys. We got a special episode coming up next. We got the scoring breakdown episode. If you want to be there for that, I'm going to be breaking down all the ins and outs and how things work. Super, super excited. I'm glad I got to share this with you. Make sure if you're not following me on all social media, go follow me and go to fantasyfootballhustler.com. That literally gets you to everywhere I am on the internet. And get subscribed on Patreon. Do that ASAP. Get into the community. Get on the superstar tier or higher. You'll get access to the draft guide with over 800 players broken down. Offense plus IDP. Got to take care of my peeps. Alrighty, guys. Remember, patreon.com/FFHustler for 20 big things are on the rise. We got the Real Fantasy Playmakers coming down. If you guys don't know about that series, it's going to be on the Give Me Money Network. And oh yeah, it's with my man Bogart Scott Free. Appreciate you guys. All the new Patreons who signed up, really appreciate you. Got mad love for all you guys. We're ready to dominate this year. Let's get into a Hustler League. Let's have some fun. Let's win some money.
Defense on me.
I don't want them to gain another yard.
You blitz all night. If they cross the line of scrimmage, I'm going to take every last one of you out. You make sure they remember forever the night they played the